Welcome to the tomb of illumination, and welcome to another video of destroying the globe theory. Garbage. So here we're going to talk about parallax. What is the parallax? Now I recently asked ChatGPT, name one thing in physics that the globe theory can explain and while the flat earth theory cannot. And they came up with parallax. So they want you to think you live on this spinning ball here that turns 15 degrees. Yes, that's pretty slow for a big ball. At the same time as it's flying around the sun out there in La La Land over 1 year. 365 days point something, only to realign with the stars is the extra quarter of a day or so. Now, so the Earth's turning like this as it's flying around the sun. So from here, this side of the sun, so the sun's out there, and it flying all the way around there and being on the other side of the sun 6 months later, they are telling us this is why the stars have moved. And this is how they get their parallax, right? So you can imagine we freeze it in time and the sun's there, so we're getting all the stars over here, right? So 6 months later we're on the other side of the sun and the stars are on that side. Okay? But the funny thing is, even though the Earth is on that side of the sun, the stars are still the same. If you look at the circumpolar stars that do not get mixed. I'm going to go over that in a minute. So it's all garbage. So I'm going to break it down and show you the facts. Okay, so what happens over the year with the flat earth model, the true physics of Earth, is the stars drift from the southern hemisphere north 1 degree per day. So I've got a couple of representations here. There's the northern hemisphere. You've got to understand that the northern hemisphere shrinks away to the north and everything out south expands out because it's a toroidal field and everything expands, is expressed out from the center. So whenever you move south, you expand with the field. Now this is really hard for a common human to understand because they're so indoctrinated from birth, but that's the way things work. And everything is relative to the observer, so that no one is to know that you are gaining in size the more you move south, because everything is relative to you. Everything's expanding in the field because nothing is actually physical. Everything is of the light. So you think of a sound wave coming out from the center because everything does come from sound. This is how we get light. The sound wave coming out, it travels out, gets bigger and bigger, doesn't it? It's exactly how things work on Earth. Consider that as the latitudes, okay? And then the longitudes, it goes like this, doesn't it? A sound wave just flows out like that. Well, you could take that as one 15-degree arc of longitude. And this is how we measure our positions around the flat Earth, is in relationship to the arcs of longitude. So from there to there, you draw in a slice of the pizza, say, 15 degrees. The time over distance from there to there is exactly the same as there to there. You know, this is what they're not explaining to you in the globe theory. They don't want you to know, and they keep bringing out flight times and all that with the globe theory, flat Earth theory. You know, they're trying to tell you it doesn't work. Because it works, everything expands in the field. So you've got to understand the size. There's a phi ratio difference between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. These aren't to scale, but what happens is the southern hemisphere sky moves north to overlay just here. That's why it's called an ecliptic plane, because the ecliptic just here, it's a plane that moves all the way around the Earth. So it's eclipting, but only for 6 months of the year. There's no eclipting for the other 6 months, because the sun, as she pops out, it's all due to magnetism, pops out into the south, and it's all the way around the south for 6 months. The sun comes out of the south for 6 months, if not the whole year, but that's going a bit deeper. And then so after, say, March or April, that connects back up again and overlays. And this movement in here is represented in the tropical celestial gap we call the ecliptic plane, where the sun moves into Cancer and expands out to Capricorn. But there's a lot more to that, because these stars, they move right up to the Arctic circle and then back out again and pop out. There's two hemisphere star rotations. One's inverted to the other. Those stars there are now mirrored out here inside out and expanded, see? So you take these stars here, flip them inside out and expand it onto this field, you've got the southern hemisphere stars. But this is only a one man's meridian. These are multitude, they're infinite, all the way around the south, all the way around here. That's where I've drawn them. See, there's infinite. You draw more of them. And every one of these represents a man's meridian. That's his perspective of the universe around him, depending on his latitude as to how much he'll see of each hemisphere. So if you're in the southern hemisphere, you'll get this coming over your head as you look north, and you'll see a little bit of the horizon. Or if you're in the north, it'll be sort of like that, your horizon, a little bit of the south. Okay, that's how it works. And this is always moving around here every day. That's your 24-hour day. It all comes from the central vortex of creation, which is in here. There's a vortex turning 15 degrees per day. That's the machine, the center of the clock, where the clock face. The clock face is out here. The mechanism's right in there, center of creation. And what comes out of it is the clock arm, which is the Milky Way that sweeps around the Earth 360 degrees over 24 hours. But you've got to understand there's two. There's the northern hemisphere mirrored to the south. So you get a southern hemisphere celestial configuration mirrored from the north. If the tropics here is a mirror, so you have to look up magnetic mirrors. Okay, and you start understanding. It's all about magnetism again, that this acts as a mirror. It projects the south out from there. And it's all to do with this, the concave field of our toroidal field. Everything's all refraction. Nothing's actually physical. Everything's a projection in here. Okay? So let's go back to the stars. So these stars in here, in the southern hemisphere sky, are revolving. They're moving west like this all the time, doing a whole 360 rotation, revolution, around back to the same place relative to the GP points of the Earth. Slightly different in time, because time is kept by the sun, and the sun is quicker than the stars, not slower. Flat Earth physics, it's all explained, it's quicker by 3 minutes 56 per day. So imagine the stars there and the sun shot ahead by 4 minutes a day, so the sun ends up a little bit ahead of the star rotation, right? Well, this star rotation is now there to fill up that void the next night. So stars have to fill this void the next night. This is why you get more stars. So they're trying to tell you that because it's filled up this void here, that the stars are quicker than the sun. But I've done plenty of videos on that explaining it all. So check them out. If they're not on YouTube, you're going to have to go to Patreon. So it's understanding that the stars revolve all the way around the center, because they're projected from the center hemisphere. Stars in here are turning. At the same time, they're turning the southern hemisphere sky around like this. But, you know, the stars are always out here, anywhere out here. It's just this one particular revolution is moving like this. You've still got another one back here, going like that too, and another one back there going like that. So when they tell you you can't stand in several places and see the same night sky, well, you can, and how do you explain that? Well, they're not accurate enough, they're not being very precise, because that star rotation there has revolved a lot more than this. So that's like that position, this has gone around, is now in that position. So if you were to stand at the exact same time, those stars are not exactly the same stars in their position as these stars here. Okay, you know what I mean? So it's going to revolve all the way around like that. This is why everybody on Earth is on a meridian from north to south, direct south. You can't avoid that. So that is your line, that is your meridian. So this is what you're seeing. Okay, it's just like that, or like that, or like that, depending on where you are. You will always get your northern projection out there. Okay, so the same thing there. Now it's saying, now what happens is this fixed there, this, as well as going around there daily, is moving north 1 degrees per day as it winds in. The sun winds into the north, up and in, and then down and out. Up and in, down and out. So that up and in, down and out, well, there's an up and in coming up, and it's got to go back down again. It's down and out. That's how we get the sun's analemma. So you can imagine this here, as it's moving this way, the sun's photograph you're taking every day is moving like this each day as the season moves. And then it comes back down again. Can you see what's happening here? All these, you could just draw it like this, like this. And because it's doing that on an individual meridian, everybody can take an image of the sun's analemma, photograph it from anywhere on Earth, and get the exact same pattern. And basically it's just going like this. Whoop, is that an S? It's just the way, because you're taking photographs every day at the exact same time as it moves like that. Because it's not only moving that way, it's moving that way. This is why these are, are changing all the time. Okay? So it goes right up and in to the June solstice, and then all the way back out, pops out, and then the sun is permanently way down here, out here on the 21st of December. Then it goes around and starts coming back up again. Right out, and then it starts coming back up again, drawing the sun back up in again. We're told this is just sitting in the tropical celestial gap here, between here. We're just told, the sun's analemma is in here. Well, which one are they telling you? Which shape is it? Because there's two. Because in reality, it goes like this. One there, and there's one there. But because this mirroring effect I've just talked about before, the crystalline structure of our toroidal field with the moisture in it, we assume it's in here. But which one are they doing? I mean, otherwise you could just, it would still have to be like this then. Like that. Depending on what side of the equator you are. But it's really like this, because this is the magnetic field of the Earth. There's two south poles right there. They are south poles. South poles. The North Poles are out here at the Arctics. They're both cold, both high pressure. There's the low pressure. The field wants to rush to there. And this is how the winds rush to the tropics, like this. The magnetic field is in the winds. So basically it's going up here, and the wind blows it up here, the magnetic field, and then it drops straight down to the ground here, at these boundary lines, and then flows through the earth to rise again. Down, flows through the earth to rise again. And how does it do that? Well, if you know a lot about physics, you understand that they find peering up here. This goes really deep, and I can go on for ages to explain all this, but anyway, this is basically the cross in physics. This is where you get the snake, you could say, because dying on the cross, this is where the sun is, okay? This is the electromagnetic induction that creates our sun, and it's the hydrogen, it's the water molecule that comes up here and it gets shredded into the isotopes to feed the plasma sun. What was I going to say? Yeah, so the magnetic field that's come up and over, it's some of the electrons find peering in here, you see. And there's a long story, there's a lot more videos to go with that, and I've done them before, I'm not going to repeat myself, but anyway, there's peering there, but all the other electrons die, you could say, and fall down to a lower state. They could call this decay, electron decay or radioactive decay or whatever. They fall down here to a lower state now, and then they pair with the lower state of the magnetic field electrons at ground level. Their ground state, you could call it ground state maybe. So the weak ones find pairing with the weak force down here, or the ground state, to help. That's the only way they cross the tropics. They cannot cross the tropics in here, only through this divine pairing marriage up here into the sun. The rest just fall down, and they find their way across the tropics only because they found a pairing with the lower state electron to rise up at their opposite Arctics. And that one comes along and comes up here. And that just keeps the cycle flowing. Nothing could get across this zone here, except at this point here where it creates the sun. And that's due to the phi ratio difference. The friction, a 3 to 2 you could say, so that 2 and 2 find balance, leaves a remainder of the 1. So the friction initially feeds the sun, the spark, they find balance, the 2 to 2, what's left over you could say, gets drawn back up in the Milky Way, which goes over the centre Arctic. That feeds the black hole of creation. It's the resting state because it's found balance. There's a balance. The initial friction creates the sun, then it finds the balance to feed the black hole of creation, which keeps our whole realm active from this internal place of creation, like the child feeding the mother. The umbilical cord here is still attached. Like in our physical realm, we'll get detached from the umbilical cord, but in our earthly realm, we're still attached via the Milky Way. And to get back to God, you go through fire, which is go through me. Going through me is Christ the Son. See, there's the Sun, there's the Milky Way. Okay? That's the other part of man's world that he knows nothing about. It's all hidden in religion, and religion's not telling you. I can tell you everything here. That's what I do. So, understanding these rotations moving north, and because they're moving north at the same time as they're going around, it's moving the sun's image each day, and then it comes back again, so it's going to come down the other side. So it's going up one side, or that one, and then down this side, so you get the figure 8. Okay, now the star overlay, because this is described in all the myths and legends, what's happening here, and the Hindus have the elephant, which means the strength of propping up the southern hemisphere that comes over to overlay. That's why the elephant is represented in the stories. The strength to lift that up to get it over there. And there's also the turtle mounting the other turtle. You look at that, you get a sort of a turtle figure image here. That's where the turtles come into it. It's all described in mythology and even in the Bible. It's fully described in the Bible, but no one can understand the Bible, just like they can't understand the other esoteric stories and myths and legends. Okay, so there's your star parallax. That's what the video is all about, your parallax. The stars overlaying the north here change the constellations. And in the, I'll read it now, in this chat GTP answer, trying to make out everything's on a globe. It says here, I'll read it all out to you. So here is one clean, concrete example. No stacking, no appeals to authority. This is ChatGPT describing it's all about the globe. Stellar parallax, measured from opposite sides of the Earth's orbit. This is the one thing flat earthers can't explain, they say. As Earth moves 300 million kilometers from one side of the Sun to the other over 6 months, nearby stars shift their apparent position against distant background stars by tiny, predictable angles. Well, you know, you see this moving. You got the stars here in relation to the northern hemisphere stars. There's this slight parallax in here, right? These stars here, as they're moving, you've got to understand they're not aligning like perfect cogs. There's only once a year that the stars and everything are completely, perfectly aligned in an alignment, and that's when the phi ratio becomes equal. Once again, you know, we talk about being equal in here. Well, it's the equal system here where becomes balanced, perfect. That's all in detail on my Patreon here. So this angular movement overlaying these stars here, and it's to do with the circular motion. And they're going to talk about that in a minute. They're going to mention that. Nearby stars shift their apparent position against distant background stars by tiny predictable angles. This shift has a fixed annual period, because it's the same every year, never changes. Scales except for the precession of the equinoxes, and that's the sun dropping back. You know, like when I said the sun's quicker. So if the sun's quicker, what does it do? Over the year, it almost laps the entire star rotation, but doesn't quite lap it. So at the end of the year, it falls short of lapping it, which means those stars fall ahead of the sun every year by 20 minutes. So the sun is dropping back 20 minutes from that, almost lapping them every year. And that's what creates the precession of the equinoxes. The shift as a fixed annual period scales exactly with distance. Near stars shift more, far stars less. So once again, you've got the far stars are the northern hemisphere. Okay, these are the faster ones because they're bigger. Okay, they're going to seem to move quicker because remember the stars in here are exactly the same as these, but it's inside out and expanded. So you understand the ratio between the distance between stars here and the ratio between the stars here, like you get a whole flipping like 30 mil as opposed to say 10 mil here. So these are going to look as though they're moving quicker. It's the way the whole system works. No physicist on Earth will ever explain this to you. I'm the only guy that does it. This is why they shadow ban my channel. It's just sitting dead in the water. They don't. They know I know. And it's destroying their globe theory. So it's up to you to go out and share it whenever you can to everybody. Otherwise, no one's ever going to know the truth. Because they're not letting it get out. Okay, matches a single geometric model with one baseline, Earth's orbital diameter. The same parallax values are measured independently by ground observations and space missions. Yeah, right. Why this is specific to globe theory. The geometric, I can't quite see the geometry requires, I think, a moving observer tracing a large circular path. A moving observer tracing a large circular path. So they're trying to say the moving observer moving with this, like this path, all the way around here. I've underlined that bit there. So what you have, this is what you should just voice into your chat GTP or whatever. Parallax, explaining parallax, or the one thing that globe can explain that flat earthers can't. That's the question I put to them. A moving observer tracing a large circular path. Another one, a fixed star field at vast distances. The angles are internally consistent across the entire sky and across decades. Well, this angle, it's always going to be the same, this angle, as it moves around the field. What flat earth theory does not have? No single working geometric model. I've had the model here for 7 years. Yeah, all buried under their YouTube control. Something here. Produces the correct magnitude of parallax. Explains why parallax is annual, symmetric, and distant dependent. Uses one consistent star height without contradictions. Flat Earth models typically invoke ad hoc star motions, various heights, or perceptive effects that fail quantitative predictions. Bottom line, globe theory makes one precise numerical prediction, stellar parallax versus distance. That is, measurable, repeatable, predictive, blah, blah, blah. I've just explained it to you. Anybody with half a biscuit between the eyeballs there can understand what I'm saying. It's all there. You can film the sun's in. We have to face north here in the southern hemisphere to film the, I think we do, the sun's analemma. And see the sun's analemma, the 2 feet. The 2 feet. Did I draw them somewhere? The 2 feet bordering the Jordan. This is the religious story. The feet, washing the feet on the, because this is the water zone, because the hemisphere, the tropical zone is very full of moisture, right? And this is their story description, washing the feet on the banks of the Jordan. See, both sun and analemma feet come and meet on the Jordan, and it's broken down hundreds of times in all religious texts and myths and legends. They're describing it all the time. All the magic is in this gap here, okay? Because this gap here, this tropical zone, represents an exploded view of creation. And you can see it up in the night sky with the 2 rotations, the 2 separate star rotations. But because where we're looking is relative to the observer, both rotations look the same size. But you can see that difference in the sun's analemma. That's showing you how everything shrinks away to the north. Because look, it goes like this. That's what it's doing on an overall basis. But then it breaks down again like a magnet. Everything breaks down. So you've got to consider the 2 hemispheres. So there'll be one in each hemisphere. Okay? And then it breaks down again for every man on a meridian. every man on a meridian from there to there. He will see, let's say it's his horizon, his arc of horizon, he gets his own image of the sun analemma within his arc of horizon. It's all relative to him. He is centered. He is always centre. See, in the globe theory, they always put the observer back here at the centre of his arc of horizon. Then they go and draw the flat Earth surface and say, oh look, everything's coming back to the observer perpendicular off that arc, which is reality. There's none of this. All they've done is taken the two hemispheres, man's two hemispheres, because there's two. I mean, they're two different, there has to be two. And they're going to put them together as though they're equal. Well, I've destroyed this equilibrium, this symmetrical globe, in my earlier video concerning, what was it concerning? That was something else. No, it's not even on my mind. It completely slipped my mind because I'm focused on this video. Because they're ignoring the phi ratio difference, you see. And it doesn't, and I've destroyed their globe theory because of that. Check out my earlier videos. Or maybe they're not posted yet because they're still on Patreon. They go through Patreon first. I'll put this one straight to YouTube because I've just already unloaded a couple on Patreon. Yeah. So you've got one in here, a little one there, because everything shrinks away to the north, and then you've got the other ones here. Because the sun comes out of here in the south, spirals out of there. Everything spirals out of the south to come around like this. This is described in the Bible too as this is the plowshare. It's the magnetic field wave, because it's infinite on the earth. The pruning hook. And in the Greek mythology, you have you go and get the red and go and put in there your pomegranate. Because in the southern hemisphere, summer, well, that's where the sun comes from, so it's infinite. The sun is all the way around the Antarctica, and these are infinite. I've just drawn a couple, but they're infinite. So the sun is everywhere. So it's lit completely all the way around. They call these the pomegranate. So what did Persephone have to do to come back up again? She had to eat some pomegranate. So she went down in the underworld at the end of their northern hemisphere summer to come up, to go along there into the underworld to rise again for the southern hemisphere summer by eating pomegranate. Okay, it's all here. If you want to learn more, you need to join Patreon here. It'll cost you $1 or $2, but if you want to know the facts, you don't want to die a dodo thinking you live on the outside of a spinning ball. Trust me, you're going to be recycled back into the system again to come back to a worse state than what it's in now. Has it got any better in the last 20, 50 years? No, trust me, you're coming back to hell. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, it's Tomb of Illumination. Share this video, put a thumbs up or likes up, because it is shadow banned. Okay, thanks.